Hello and welcome back to Handheld Coding OPL. I hope you've enjoyed my previous episode, hope you've had a play with those programs and are ready to learn some more. Today we're going to have a look at comparative functions, putting a little bit of mathematics into our programs and adding a few new characters not available on the keyboard. But first we're going to talk about arrays. No, not an increase in wages, an array. An array is a simple way of defining one or more variables in a very short piece of code. So in the last episode we created a program called name and we used two variables, name $1 and name $2, both of 10 characters in length, and we defined them separately. Instead of that, we could have specified name $, brackets 2, 10. And what this does, it creates two variables, name $1, name $2, both of 10 characters. If we wanted 3, we could simply change the first number for a 3. When using an array with an integer or a floating point, we simply specify the number of variables we want because we don't specify the length of the variable. So to create 5 floating point integers, we'd simply put a name, brackets, and then 5. As you can see, an array can save quite a lot of space in your code. When we want to recall a specific integer within the program, we simply put the name of the integer and in brackets the number of the integer we want to recall. So we're going to write a short program to calculate volume. So we're going to need height, length and width and multiply them together. Feel free to have a go yourself, pause the video here, otherwise this is how I've done it. So as you can see, I've defined the local variable L. It's a floating point as it's got no symbol after it, and I've defined 3 of them. These will represent length, height and width. I've also created a floating point variable VOL, which stands for volume, and is going to be our output variable. The rest of the program looks very much like name, so we're asked to input the height, the width and the length. The screen is then cleared, and now we define the volume. So the volume equals L1 times L2 times L3. We're going to print the volume, and I've used a semicolon so it prints on the same line as volume is. And we've finished the program with a get so it doesn't immediately exit. So this is great, it's a simple program, it works well, but what if you want to calculate more than one volume and you don't want to keep going into the program? So we're going to create a short menu system. So this is how I've done it. So I've created an extra variable, $. It's only one character in length and it's a string, hence the $. And this is going to be our menu output. Immediately after that, I've put a label in. We know it's a label because it's got 2 colons after it, and I've named it start, just like we did in the lock program. The rest of the program runs the same right up until get. Once we press a program after displaying our volume, it's going to clear the screen and then it prints again. I've put a semicolon and then a new definition. So $CHR and then brackets allows us to specify any character in the oscillocode. I'll put a copy of the oscillocode below for you to download so you can see what the different characters are. In this case, I've put number 63. 63 is a question mark, and so this will print again followed by a question mark, which, while not necessary, does look better. Immediately underneath that, it prints yes or no. Now we've got $m equals get $. So get $, is slightly different to get in that it will assign whatever the next string key press is to the variable that is specified. In this case, $m. So I'm wanting a Y or an N to say yes, I want to continue, or no, I don't. After that is the if command. So we use this in the lock program to say if the number is greater than or less than my pin number, I want you to go back to the start. In this case though, I've put if $m equals capital Y, we're going to assume that's a yes, and we're going to go back to the start. If it's not a capital Y, then the program will skip to the next else if. The next else if is $m equals capital N. There is no program to run after this, because actually if you don't want to run it again, we need to leave the program. So I've put an end if as there's no other options, and if you've not pressed a Y or an N, I'm going to assume you want to leave the program. Finally, the program clears the screen, prints by, pauses for 1 second, and then exits. So there's a couple of things about this program. The first is I've put an else if $m equals n. And it doesn't do anything. It just continues to the end if and then continues to exit the program. So this is a redundant piece of code. I've put it in just to show you that you can have more than one result using the else if, but we're actually just going to delete it since in this example it's completely unnecessary. The second issue with this is that if the keyboard is set to lowercase and you press a Y, it's going to register it as not a capital Y, and therefore it will proceed to the end of the program and exit. There's a few ways around this. The first is on the Psion 2, you can set the keyboard state. So we do that using kstat. There are 4 states. Kstat 1 is uppercase, kstat 2 is lowercase, kstat 3 is numbers where pressing shift will take you to uppercase, and kstat 4 is numbers where pressing shift will take you to lowercase. We could put kstat 1 in just before we define our $m. On the series 3 and 5, unfortunately you can't set the keyboard state, so instead you can use upper $, and essentially what this does is you create a new variable, put the new variable equals upper dollars and your current variable, and it will convert that to a capital. There is a third option, and this is the one we're going to use, and I'm going to use this because it works across all Psions. So this is the OR command, and what this means is if this is true or this is true, I want you to follow the instructions that come after. So in this example we're going to put if $m equals capital Y, or if $m equals lowercase y, go to star. And this resolves the keyboard issue, unless it's set to numbers. But you could put another OR in if you wanted. Or you could just ignore it. Anyway, as you can see, there's a lot of different ways of programming the same thing, and I'm sure that if you did this yourself, you might come up with a slightly different way of doing it. You can also see that an array is a very efficient way of producing more than one variable. So next up, we're going to have a look at comparators and putting mathematical functions into your program. To do this, I'm going to use the example of a miles to the gallon calculator. So we're going to first of all convert litres to gallons. If you're using American gallons, the conversion from litres to gallons is this. If you're using imperial system, the conversion is this. So feel free to have a go at creating a miles to the gallon calculator and pause the video here. Otherwise, here's what I've done. So I've started by creating 4 variables. 3 of them are floating points for litres, miles, and miles to the gallon. Given the accuracy of miles, you could easily use an integer for that one, but I've used floating points to create accuracy. Just so you're aware, if you do mathematical formulas with a combination of integers and floating points, it will output as a floating point. But if you only use integers, it will always output an integer. Then, like we've done previously, I've defined $m with 1 character to create a menu so we can repeat the calculation if we wish to. So we get the inputs for litres, the inputs for miles, and then we calculate miles to the gallon. Bear in mind, when writing mathematical formula, brackets are always calculated first, followed by multiplication, division, and then any addition or subtraction. Because of that, this equation does not have the same output as this equation. The brackets are important. So now we've got our miles to the gallon calculator and we can calculate it as many times as we want. Why don't we give some interaction from the Psion itself? So for example, let's say you're getting more than 50 miles to the gallon. Well done. But let's say you're between 50 and 35. I mean, it's fairly average, so not too bad. If you're getting 35 to 20 miles to the gallon, that's not great. And if you're getting below 20 because you're driving a V8, then ouch. So in order to get the Psion to output as we wish, we're going to use comparators. So these are greater than, less than, and equals. We can also combine greater than or less than with the equals to mean greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. So let's start with the first if. So we're going to print the miles to the gallon as we've done already, and on the next line, if we got greater than or equal to 50 miles to the gallon, we're going to print well done. Then we're going to put an else if for our next zone. Now this time we want it to bracket between two figures. So the way we're going to do that is we know it's got to be less than 50, because if it's 50 or more, we've already said we want to print well done. So this time we're going to use MPG less than 50. We're going to put an and in, and what the and does is instead of an or which says if this or that, do the other, this says if this and that, I want you to continue this program. So in this case, we're bracketing the numbers between 50 and 35. So we want less than 50 and greater than or equal to 35. And if that's true, then we're going to print not too bad. Our next else if is going to be less than 35, because if it's equal to 35, it's not too bad. And it's going to have to be greater than 20. And if this is true, we're going to print that's not great. The final else if is less than 20. And in this case, we're just going to print ouch. Don't forget to put an end if or you'll get a syntax error. And then put a pause in for a second before we clear the screen and start the menu. The comparators greater than, less than and equal to are very useful, as are the options of and or to create decisions within programs. I hope I've made this straightforward enough to understand, and I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, don't forget to click like, subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. As always, there's a link below to all the code from today. If you have any feedback, either positive or negative, I'd love to hear it, so please pop a comment below. As always, my name's Hugh. This has been Handheld Coding OPL. Thanks for watching.